Hello, and welcome to Varn Blog. And I'm going to discuss some conservative thinking that I kind of think we need to look at honestly. I've been listening to the works of Auron MacIntyre. And while he is largely responsible for incorporating, in some ways, sanitizing neo-reactionary ideas, he also has stumbled on some real old truths about the nature of bureaucratic organizations. And the nature of bureaucratic organizations in democracies, where there is an incentive, particularly in representative democracies, to outsource the thinking to administrative apparatuses. I return again to the work of Michael Sandel, the communitarian thinker, who argued relatively persuasively, in my mind, that early Republican thought was largely communitarian and based off of shared values emergent with elites with low distance from their constituency. The low distance is important because those elites are more easily made accountable. Similarly, on the left, we have to control our institutions and our bureaucrats, even when we don't want to. But there is a level of complexity, and I've been talking about complexity for years, that hides this from us, that increases the distance. And when you view yourself as an atomized individual making consumer choices, this is even more inevitable. Now, I'm not here to make the moral critique of consumerism. I'm not interested in that. I want people to think about the meaning of the complete domination of the bourgeoisie structuring itself. These are not impersonal, abstract, logical forces that come down on you. These forces were built by people in the past who realized that they need to structurally protect themselves, not just from the hoi polloi, but also from the market mechanisms that they themselves were creating. So while your robber barons could literally come through ruthless cunning and brute power, be they lion or fox in Pareto's world, from nothing and dominate industry of millions, that is not possible now. The accumulation is too great, too structuralized, too removed. Furthermore, the privatization of everyday life under neoliberalism to force things that have not been marketized in the past into rentier markets, and specifically rentier markets, while not neo-feudalism in any real sense, as normal production still drives everything, it does remove anyone from being in charge at the bourgeois level. The bourgeoisie can establish their kids as lesser billionaires, live off the financial gains of ever decreasing mass profitability, without the profitability ever going into enough of a crisis to force the immiseration of the general population. And in lieu of that, ideology, meta-religion, whatever, all these words are nebulous, holds things together. But since, and Arun MacIntyre is right about this, capitalist technique has developed so technocratically and so diffusely, and the ideological apparatuses work best when people do not realize that they are ideological apparatuses. That people think they are just preserving truth. But ask yourself, why are we so concerned about fake news today? The National Enquirer was on the shelves in every grocery store when I was a kid. A friend of mine pointed this out to me. It wasn't a threat because we all knew people engaged with it kind of as a joke. Yes, some people believed it, but caveat imperator. It's on your own mistake. So the question is, when we look at that, the domination of structuralized capitalism, but instead of seeing it as just totally impersonal logical forces that just emerge from nature, remembering people set this up to protect themselves, not just from the hoi polloi, not just from the proletariat and the plebs, but also from themselves. As Adam Smith would actually point out to you, that most of the bourgeoisie do kind of like to become rentier. It's just fucking easier than making shit. Now, the idea that financial capital is new and a total drain of the economy is not entirely true. Financialization has always been with us in capitalism, just like there's always been state involvement, often picking winners and losers historically. But the fragmented nature of a total state is an interesting thing to think about. I was thinking about Benjamin Studebaker talking about how people throw themselves against a blob, siding with one thing over the other. We're fighting the unelected judiciary to protect the unelected administrative state. Or from the conservative perspective, we're fighting to empower the unelected judiciary appointed by the president to fight the administrative state appointed by the president that is not. Do you see what's going on here? My friend also asked me, if Jamal Bowman was such a bad retail politician, why did AIPAC spend so much money defeating him? And I was like, I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, he's still a bad retail politician. The money is also to make sure that the person replaces him is loyal to those institutions. But there's an institutional logic here that is even destructive to the total state. And this paradox we have to ask ourselves a lot about. Auron points out that the foxes, aka the managerial elites, and I'm going to use that term because it's not a class term, but it does make a lot of sense. The eunuchs become in charge when the emperor is gone. When the people who control the mode of production have abdicated their responsibility to live off their returns and not do any work, then the managers do run the show. Now, there's an illusion here in creating the PMC as a class that you could just, everyone who with a college degree has gone through this, and it doesn't really work that way. The elites are elite, and they are subordinate to capital. But structuralized capital means they're subordinate to the structures of capital, not to individual people anymore. If anything, we talk about the effect of dead labor, but we don't talk about the effect of dead capitalist structures set up by people who no longer are alive. They do have a mechanism, but they were set up by people and for certain purposes. They were not just impersonal forces that emerged from nowhere. So the conservative is right about that. The conservative is also right that many leftists have a nearly chaotic relationship to these institutions. They both want to preserve them and destroy them simultaneously, afraid to go after the administrative state and the people actually administering capital, but also afraid to let things stand as they are. And what incentive do they have to do that? Because your politics of differentiation, your media niches, etc., would be undone by that. And the conservatives are right that atomized individuals are manipulable. After all, they were one of the big people pushing this atomization for a long time. Yet we still have to explain, why does it seem like there's two anti-systemic churnings that go nowhere? What about the fragmentationary nature of the state leads to that? And why has the structuralization of decadent capital allowed the state to subsume so much? Well, part of it is these managers need workers. And social bonds are bonds beyond either a consumer or worker relationship. You are reduced to mere productivity and mere consumption. Productivity in what you do, consumption in who you are. And this becomes even more true in rent-seeking and throwing money and increasingly rotten apparatuses that are just pushing numbers up for nothing, not even producing anything. Let us ask ourselves what this means now. Who do these ideological apparatuses serve? And what have they led to? More hubris and delusion? Look at Joe Biden and tell me that the Democratic Party shouldn't have known what was going to happen when they didn't curate his image. And why didn't they know? Did they believe their own bullshit? Have they hidden behind para-state organizations and large corporations enforcing their will from them that they can't even follow their own intelligence anymore? Have we gone down informational niches so thoroughly that we're all stuck in our own individual niche? These conservatives answer these questions. They shouldn't be the only ones. A lot of what they offer is defenses of other power, a return to lions, natural order, organic this or that, without being able to define where these traditions come from and how fragile they were in the past. Nor can they defeat the techniques that they're up against, even with massive amounts of money. But there is a real decadence here. A military that is so devoted to technique and to management and to quick wins that it can't manage long-term material logistics, or at least not in a affordable way. The complexity is too great. And this returns us to Tainter. The more something centralized, there's also a counter dynamic where it also fragments internally. Niche bureaucrats need their niches. They need their battles. They need their fiefdoms. No one will ever subsume themselves totally to a unified mass vision. And why would they? Only in desperation do people tend to do that. A programmatic vision has to control the bureaucrats, has to control the institutions, has to subordinate them to larger political wills, both to the public, the demos, and the leadership, both to the pro and those who emerge organically with skills and passions. We will not do away with the need for leadership, just like we will not do away with the fact we do not all have the same skills. What we must do is make those people truly accountable to those people who put society together. And it is not elites who do this. It is elites who manage it. If the bourgeoisie can now survive off of rents because even in declining profit rates, direct extraction is still viable, then you need to ask yourself those questions. There's no past to go back to, no clear organic order of which everyone will just subsume themselves. Conservatives will give you that answer, but you have to at least acknowledge the validity of many of the questions they raise. Thank you, and good night. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell. Have a good day.